hey, listen, little Johnny, man, he is not listening to me at all right now. He is being rebellious. He's lying all the time. Like, I don't know how to deal with that.
Always little Johnny.
Always little Johnny. Yeah. Jackson.
Okay, there we go. That's a rebellious kid's name.
That's the millennial kids' names now. So that's what we use. No, it's always the millennials' faults, right?
Welcome back to the podcast. This week we're going to be talking about students, and we are joined today by our very own student pastor, Mr. Don Jacobson.
The one and only.
The one and only.
Yes.
Greetings and salutations.
So Don,
yes,
tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well,
About your family and what you do, how you got here, stuff.
You want to know everything. All right. Well, my name's Don Jacobson. I am the student pastor here at Orlando Baptist, and I have been married for 26 years to my beautiful wife, Jenny. We have got 4 children. I've got my oldest, Christian. He's 23. He just got married in July. Wow. I have a
You are
married
a father-in-law.
kid. I am officially a father-in-law. How crazy is that?
New
right?
title.
That threshold.
Yeah. Achievement unlocked. Yes. I've got a 20
student pastor talking about video game achievements.
I didn't even get it.
You're
I'm
an old man.
I am.
Well, you read too much. That's why. Play more video games.
Hey,
But I'm also the young adult pastor, so I'm kind of embarrassed that I don't,
you gotta start gaming, bro. Okay, back to you.
My oldest daughter is Emily. My youngest daughter is Sarah. She is a senior in high school, and
Who is in the youth group with you?
Who's in the youth group? Yeah, she helps out a ton. She is our production youth leader. So she just does. Yeah, she's indispensable to me right now. So, and then my youngest, Gavin, he is 2 years old. And he's a whole nother story. I don't know how much you want me to get into that, but we are in the process of adopting him. And hopefully by the end of the year, he will be officially a Jacobson.
Yeah, that story is worth its own other podcast,
Yeah,
for real.
Definitely. Yeah, seriously.
We'll have to drag Jenny in here and
Yeah.
make that happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Good luck
Jenny,
with that.
get ready.
Good luck with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll give her plenty of time.
Yeah. So I am, like I said, I'm a student pastor here. I've been doing it for a year as of this month. So I've been excited, and it's been an amazing journey up to this point, and I can't wait to see what God's got in store for me going forward.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, this is not your first time in youth ministry. Like, you've done youth. What was your
Right. So, so I've been in ministry, mostly kids ministry, for over 15 years. And I've done like every role. I've been a small group leader. I've acted on the stage. I've been a host. I've been a curriculum director. I've been production director. I've been a kids ministry leader. And about 4 years ago, my buddy called me up and said, "Hey, listen, I've got an opening for student ministry. I think you'd be great." And at first I was like, "You're out of your ever-loving mind." Like, little kids are great. I love little kids because, they will laugh and they will dance and they'll have fun. But teenagers, no, that's not for me. And he's like, no, really, just trust me on this. Come in. And I've been hooked since. Like, I did that for about a year. And then when we came back to OBC, I was like, I talked with our current youth pastor there, and I was like, "Hey, listen, I need to be plugged in. I don't care what I'm doing. Like, I'll mop the floors for you. Just let me be a part of this ministry." So it's, it's been a unique experience for sure. Like, something only God could do. Like, there's no way I could have planned this out.
Can you tell us a little bit about your transition from corporate world?
Yeah. So
that's
sure.
huge.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's unique. So before I took this job on full time, my last job title was technical operations manager. I've been working with that company for 20 years. Like, it started as a startup, and
You've been with it the entire time.
Before startups were cool.
Yeah, before startups were cool. Yeah, So did that for a whole bunch of years. I thought, man, this is great. We had our plan all planned out. We had our kids early in our marriage. I was married at 20, first kid at 22. Like, we were like, hey, we're going to be in our 40s, and we're going to be empty nesters, and we're just going to be living life, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be awesome. And then God said, hey, watch this.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
change jobs, new kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was like, hey,
Literally.
Dustin comes up and is like, hey, listen, we've got this opening. I want you to, to start praying about it and thinking about it. And, as Jenny and I are like working through that decision, all this stuff happened with Gavin's parents, and next thing you know, at one point in time, we had twin girls,
Yeah.
a 2-year-old, twin 8-year-old girls,
Yeah.
a 2-year-old plus my 2 daughters all living under the same roof, which was
Crazy.
totally unexpected, right? But
that was a whole different grace dispensing that God gave y'all.
yes, I earned a lot more gray hairs last year. That's for sure. So, but yeah, so then after Jane and I prayed about it and spent a lot of time just contemplating what to do, we're like, this is obviously a God thing. How do we say no to God?
And all the while, you were the interim student guy from probably February till you
February.
came on full time. So there was at least 6 months where you were doing both.
Doing both, yeah. That was, so full-time job, part-time job, full-time parenting, new parents all over again. Yeah. So
if you're in ministry, there's no such thing really as part-time ministry.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's, Wednesdays are amazingly awesome days and amazingly exhausting days all at the same time. So like now I haven't worked a day in the last year because I love what we're doing here. I love the direction that we're going as a church and as a ministry, and I couldn't ask for anything else.
Yeah, that's awesome. And this is obviously a huge passion and focus of ministry for you that God has, as you said, cultivated in the last 4 years. Is there anything specific about like just 6th through 12th graders that like why?
Well, they're so smart. Like, I mean, I love that about like teaching kids. Like I've always, I learned early on that my calling was, family ministry, let's say, like, that kindergarten through, 12th grade ministry area. Right. And just the idea that we have this opportunity to lay a solid foundation, that we have this opportunity to encourage parents, that we have this opportunity to, just walk alongside families and make a positive impact in their lives, even if, because it's just for a season, right? Like that's what I try to impress upon like all of our leaders, our small group leaders, or, in kids ministry, those small group leaders, like you only have, X amount of time with this group. This isn't like an adult group that you're, once you're in a parenting class, like you're always there, like you're always going to be parents. Like I've got 7 years with students and, 7 years with the little kids. Like, what do we do at that time, and how do we make that effective, and how do we communicate to them that they are the future of the church, or they are the church now, right?
Which is huge. And we've seen in scripture, I even read Jeremiah 1 this morning that talks about Jeremiah says to God, I can't do this. I'm only like a youth. And so God uses him. Some of the disciples were teenagers. Paul tells Timothy, like, don't let people despise you for your youth. So there is this zeal that comes with 6th through 12th graders, but that also means on the other side, there are challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what we want to talk about today and dive into and give tips for parents, because it's tough for sure. So we want to dive into that and encourage parents that way. So great place to start is connecting. So what would you say is a way for parents to connect with students?
Well, I mean, we really should probably define the issue first. Like, what is it that parents are battling against? What is it that our students are fighting against right now? And I mean, it's not a new issue. Like this, like what is going on in our students now has been the same thing that's going on when you guys were students, when I was students, when my kids were students.
Which was a long time ago.
Which was a very...
For us, not for you.
Yeah. We haven't been in high school for a very long time.
Yes, and it's been even longer for me, and that's what I think is also so funny about like my ministry is like I am not your prototypical student guy. Like I'm 20-something year old that knows all the cool stuff, and,
which is great as pastors because that person usually causes issues. So it's nice.
And looking back,
it's nice that you're where you're.
There was when we were in high school, there were some people who were way too young. And we're like, looking back, you're like, who signed off on this?
Well, and that's why you put the student pastor at the edge of the group photos, the staff photos, so you can just cut them out and just put the new one in on top of them.
Copy, paste, repeat.
Yeah, exactly. No, I kid. But no, yeah. So I've got to see like a couple generations of kind of the same issue, and that is like the outside voices, the influences from, back in my day, it was our sports groups or our friend groups, which is still the thing now. But with social media, it's been amplified so much more. Like our kids, this generation, Gen Z, iGen, whatever you want to call them, they have just this pressure, like this overwhelming amount of information and pressure from so many different influencers or people who they think are important in their lives, that they are trying to mimic, that they are trying to be like. There are all these influencers telling them, like all these different voices telling them how they should act, what they should wear, the thoughts they should have, the people they're supposed to imitate. And, there's so many voices.
Yeah, like it used to be hyper localized, right? You had your teachers, your parents, your friends. Now it's a global pressure. You've got everybody all over the entire world telling you how you should be. And if you're not that way, man, you cancel it in 2 minutes. It's ridiculous.
And not only that, like it's like the one of the issues with social media is that you only see the Instagram side of things.
Right. Yeah, you
right?
see real life.
Like you don't see the fact that, the kid's life is in shambles. All you see is where they had a good dinner that night, right? Or that they are standing with their friends for that one selfie second, but the rest of the day they're off by themselves, right? So,
or even simply the dances that make it on to TikTok. How many times did they run that a practice run?
Yeah. So there's this weird simultaneity of like you're not connected with anybody really, but you're really kind of connected with everybody all at once. It's just
they are the most connected generation right now, but they're also the most isolated generation of anyone. Like it's just such an issue right now. It's such a problem, and it's so hard for parents to bridge that gap because so much of their life is in their hand. Right. Like there's so much of their, like you can't see what's going on. Like I don't know.
It's the looking glass. It's the,
right. Yeah.
The thing to the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel like parents, if they're the most isolated, so they're connected to the world, but not necessarily connected to their physical surroundings? Like how do parents connect with them?
So how do parents connect? That's a great question. Like it's an easy answer, but it's a hard thing to do. Like one is to be intentional. Like you have to set up times. Like I tell my students all the time, like there are times that you are available. It doesn't matter how busy you think you are. Like a car ride to school.
Yeah.
Car rides to school are like 20 to 30 minutes long usually, right? That's a half hour each way, an hour a day.
Yeah.
5 days a week.
That a parent can connect with their kids. When I was growing up, I never used my dining room table. Like if the table was cleaned off, it was who's coming over. Like we always ate in the living room. We always ate at the countertop. We always ate somewhere else. And to contrast that, when I was dating my wife in high school, like when I went over to her house, their dining room table was always empty. And we sat there for dinner and we sat there for game time and we sat there and just talked. And when Jenny and I got married, that was like something that we were intentional about. It was like, we always want to use our dining room table.
Yeah.
And we do that even now. Like we eat 5-6 nights out of 7, if we don't have if there wasn't a game or something else going on, we're at the dinner table. Like even if it's just fast food, like we're going to sit at the dinner table and we're going to ask how your day is and we're going to see what's going on and we're going to listen for these cues and we're not going to get frustrated by the short answers or everything's good. No, really, what happened today? Tell me about your science class. Like, did you do any labs or anything? Like, how'd that work?
Like you're intentionally showing interest in the things they're interested in.
Yeah, intentionality is I think key. Is like you have to carve out time, and it has to be like legitimate time. It can't be 5 minutes, like right before game starts. Hey, how was your day? Great, awesome. All right, go get them.
I think part of it too is like treating communication as from a servant's heart. Like I'm here to intentionally try to dive into your world so that I can serve you and help you kind of figure out the reality kind of thing. And so
we all know that you can see through it when someone isn't doing that.
Right.
When someone asks you a question and they're not there. They're just like, oh, well, I got that question checked off.
Yeah.
And students for sure can see through that.
And we've been actually this month in Alive students, we've been talking about that. Like, how are we? Like our first week was in James, be slow to speak, quick to hear, right? And that's being present in that conversation, right? Like you're not being slow to speak because you're waiting for them to stop talking so you can start talking, but you are essentially just investing in that person you're talking to. And these are principles that apply to everyone, but parents, like, you really got to be intentional because I mean your kids are your kids. Like they're always going to be your kids.
Yeah.
And that word investment though is huge. Like you don't invest for the short term. This is a long game.
Oh yeah.
You know, Corey and I only have little kids right now, but you've done this before. Like that investment was a long game over a long period of time.
Yes, absolutely. It's daily, and just like an investment, sometimes you've got good days, and some days you've got bad days. But when you look at it over a long run, like your investments, right? You want to see that slope up. That's the same thing you want with your kids, and that, I don't want to say that and say, hey, I'm assigning a value to this time because it's invaluable, right? Like there's nothing better than spending time with your kids.
Yeah.
Like you can't, there is hardly anything better that you can be doing in your life aside from, reading your Bible and spending time with God, right? Like there's nothing more important than that.
Yeah. Because God has given them to us on loan for a season saying train them up in his word. So how do you do that consistently? Well,
a few ways. Like, one, we talked about like investing in that time and just being intentional at that time. The other thing, like one thing I found with my kids was just being authentic. Mm-hmm. Like if you're not the cool kid, don't try to be the cool kid, right? Like just be who you are, and they appreciate that. Like students appreciate authenticity, and they can sniff out fakeness in an instant, and you will lose their trust, and you've got to work 10 times harder to get that back. But to do it consistently, like it's the same thing in your life. Like, again, you have to carve out that time. You have to be real with that time, but you have to want to do it, right? Like you have to want to spend time in the Word every day. You have to want to spend time with your spouse every day. You have to want to spend time with your kids every day. But I think authenticity is probably the biggest tool you can use for longevity.
And it's also, they need to see the authenticity of your faith. Like it's not just in word. It's also like, do they wake up in the morning and see you reading your Bible? Like, do they hear that you're praying for them? Because they're going to sniff out like, oh, that's, dad does whatever he wants during the week, but then on Sunday he goes to church and we're suddenly supposed to follow this Jesus guy who only really cares about one day a week. It's like that.
Yeah. And I hear those stories from students all the time. Like, hey, listen, I'm trying to grow in my faith, but it's hard when I'm the only one in my house doing it.
Yeah.
And these are coming from like students that are like parents who are like, oh yeah, these are solid parents. Like, their mom and dad's there. They've got the
So
the
parents, be on the watch because we know what's going on. Just kidding.
Got that inside.
No, that we save that for the elementary teachers. Like they know everything that's going on, right?
Hey,
because there are no secrets among
no
you
filters.
And your elementary kids, teachers.
That's fun.
So, but honestly, authenticity is the biggest way to do it consistently.
Yeah.
So
connecting, as we've talked about, parents, every student is different. Sixth graders are way different than 12th graders. So sometimes this can be extremely discouraging. So what would you say to parents who are discouraged that are, trying to have the dinner time and they just feel like they're getting shut down? Like, what would you say to them?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, we all go through that, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to, metaphorically speaking,
Homer Simpson.
Punch my kid in the throat because of something they've done or something they've said or whatever, right?
So hypothetically aggressive.
Yes. No, I do not advocate punching your kids.
Punches.
Okay, no,
just a little chop.
Not at all. No, none of that. Spare the rod, right? No. Like honestly, like disappointment's going to happen. Like you are going to feel discouraged. You are going to feel let down. For our circumstance, and like everything's a little bit different, right? Like I have had the privilege of being married for 26 years, right? Like so I know that when I'm feeling discouraged, I can go to my wife and be like, hey, listen, this is what's going on right now. This is what's real, and we are partners when it comes to raising our kids. Like there isn't necessarily a bad cop, good cop in our household.
That's good.
Like we both discipline our kids when it was appropriate. We both have those conversations. Sometimes, like even now, my son calls my wife more than he calls me, and that's great. I love that. Like I want those. We need those relationships between each parent, right? So that is probably the biggest thing that's helped us in the Jacobson household has been being able to have a partner to go through these disappointments with, because we're going to go through those highs, we're going to go through those lows. Having each other there has been great.
Yeah.
So how would you encourage somebody who's a single parent?
Yeah, and if you don't have that, I would heavily lean on your church family.
Yeah.
Like, I guarantee, like when you're going through the weeds, when you're going through that low, that valley, you're going to think that you're the only parent that's ever had to deal with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a unique circumstance. They don't understand my kid. They don't understand what's going on. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Parents have been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we can use each other as a resource, even if it's just a sounding board. Hey, listen, little Johnny, man, he is not listening to me at all right now. He is being rebellious. He's lying all the time. Like, I don't know how to deal with that.
Always little Johnny.
Always little Johnny. Yeah. Jackson.
Okay, there we go. That's a rebellious kid's name.
That's the millennial kids' names now. So that's what we use. No, it's always the millennials' faults, right? No.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys.
Boomer.
Thanks.
I'm not a boomer. I'm not that old.
I know. I'm just kidding.
No, he's a Gen Xer.
I'm a
You
Gen
guys made
Xer,
good
man.
music. Thank you.
You're welcome.
that's
Great
true.
movies too.
It's the only thing they did good.
I think our entertainment is.
They'll fight you about that, though.
Just kidding.
They're good at
Let's not
fighting.
air this here. Okay, but back to the single parents.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
So single parents, your biggest resource is going to be your church family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, where do you want your influence to come from? Where do you want your advice to come from? Do you
Yeah.
want it to come from an unchurched person?
Right.
Who's going to say, "Oh, I don't know, man, it's tough. You need to, ship your kid off or whatever."
Right.
Or do you want like a biblically backed
Yeah.
advice?
And people who are sealed with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I want the Holy Spirit speaking to
Yeah.
me through someone else.
That's
Like,
perfect. Yeah.
that's
so good.
And that social media problem with the students is still so prevalent with, if you're a single parent and you're on an island, you're going on YouTube, you're going anywhere, reading articles. How do I do this?
Right.
And you might be getting advice that's not biblically sound, and you need people.
Right.
Yeah. You need the church.
And if I
sure.
encourage people, like, Paul, like, I've been reading a ton of Paul, like, so most of my quotes are going to come from his letters today, but like Paul writes, like, and don't grow weary in doing good, but in due season we will reap. We do not give up. Like, that's like during those low times, we can't give up as parents.
Yeah.
Like, that's when we have to double down. Even if you're by yourself, even if you are a single parent, like you've got to be consistent. You've got to put the time in. You've got to see it through. Like, your kids are going to realize that as well.
Yeah.
Like, like whatever's going on in your life, like you said earlier, like this is all learning instances for your students. Like, they are going to pick up how you handle
yeah, for sure.
that disappointment, that downturn.
Yeah.
And they're gonna learn from that, and they're gonna do that. And then when they go through this later on in life, how you dealt with that is going to directly influence how they
Yeah.
Yeah.
deal
And
with
I've
that.
seen this in people where you can tell if they have an eternal perspective. It's like when Paul says, like, these light and momentary sufferings are not
yeah.
worth anything for compared to the eternal weight of glory. You can tell a parent when they're going through something really difficult, that child is picking up how much are they actually, their heart is oriented towards eternity, or how much is their heart oriented towards the temporary things that are happening on this earth.
100%.
So the next thing we want to talk about, which is, I'm glad you said that verse and we talked about this, is sin is real, mistakes happen, crises will happen in life. It's not an if, it's a when they happen. So how do you parent through crisis?
Very carefully is the right, but I mean, so the crisis, like what crises are crises?
Crises?
I think it's crisis.
Crisis? I don't know. Whatever. What big rock problems are our students facing right now? Like, when I was a kid, probably when you guys were kids, like
Teen pregnancy.
Yeah.
sex before marriage, like all of that stuff. That was really the prevalent thing.
And dare.
And dare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that help anybody?
Drugs against something
You know,
against
I'm
something.
going to show my age here, but I remember when that program was started by Nancy Reagan back in 80.
The only thing I can think of when I think of a dare, and it is not connected, but Scruff McGruff.
Scruff McGruff, yes.
Chicago,
And their
Illinois,
t-shirts were cool.
652.
Were they?
To me.
Okay.
Graphic design. The beginning of graphic.
That's what sparked the interest. Yes.
Back at it.
Yeah, back at it. So dealing with crisis. So the biggest issues. So I'm sorry. I'm trying to get back on track here. So the biggest issues are not really sex is still an issue. Yes, Kids are having sex. We need to deal with that. You need to know what's going on in your kids' lives. But honestly, with the proliferation of the internet, the ease of access to what's going on, and we talked about this at the top, right? Like, they are more isolated than others. Students are actually more alone now than they've ever been, and so their biggest battles are anxiety and depression, right? They are gender issues, homosexuality, like all of that vein of
So that's more of the issue than premarital sex.
right. Yeah, like premarital sex is still a thing, and that's something that we all have to deal with. But honestly, like when I counsel kids right now, it's more along the lines of, hey, it's not like, little Johnny and I are getting it on, but
Whoever that guy is.
whoever that kid's the worst.
I thought we landed on Jackson.
I hate him.
Thought it was little
Jackson,
Jackson.
I know, but little Jackson and I don't want to say another name. because
please don't.
I don't want to pick a real name. Are doing anyway. The biggest issues right now still come from social media.
Yeah.
Like those
identity issues.
The identity issues, they are the big issues, the social issues of today. Kids pick up on that and they want to feel like they're making a difference in their world. So they're latching onto this stuff and they're making it part of their identity. And so as leaders, as parents, like how do you deal with that? Like the way you don't deal with it is ostracize your kid, is cut them off and be like, oh, you know what, you're dead to me, or
instantly blow up and just
Right.
destroy their whole world.
yes, right, like they're
made a
looking for
mistake.
acceptance from
Yeah,
you,
right.
Yeah.
or they're looking for correction from you, or they're looking for guidance from you, and the worst thing you can do is make that wall even taller and stronger between you and your kid, because that's a hard wall to break
And
down.
it doesn't mean don't discipline.
no
It just means
absolutely.
how you discipline, you need to be super intentional about it.
You need grace.
Yeah.
You need
Grace and truth.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, and yeah, exactly. Grace and truth. Yes. You can't just be like, oh, okay, well, this is just a phase and they're going to work through it. And we're just going to let them figure this out and go down this path, because that is a path of destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a path to sin and a life of just hardships,
Yeah.
right? Like you still have to guide and direct them
Right.
through that. And again, I would emphasize you need a partner in what you're doing. If it's not a spouse or your church body, you might need professional
Sure.
help, right? Like if your kid's got an eating disorder,
Yeah.
if your
don't
kid's
let it go.
suffering through anxiety and major depression, like
Don't
I don't know about you guys, I took a psychology class. It's like one class in college.
Yeah.
Like I am not qualified.
I have a counseling degree, still not qualified.
exactly. Right.
But that's the wisest thing you can do sometimes is, and as pastors at this church specifically, we want to be that resource. You can come to us and know we're not going to make something up.
Right.
If something
We'll help you get
is
the right help.
if something is that, I will work hard to find someone for your student to meet with, and I know you guys would do the same thing. But that is the wisest decision.
And
to make.
there's always been a stigma, like as a parent, like, oh no, I can't ask for help. I'll be a failure
Right.
as a mom or a dad.
Yeah, we are all
Start
failures.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
We're
We're failures.
failures.
Yeah.
I'm cool
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have made so many mistakes in all of my kids' lives that I could be considered a failure. But asking for help, you have to ask for help.
Yes.
You have to make that a priority. If you can't handle that, if they're coming to you with like these super huge issues, you need help.
Yeah, in any area of life, accepting your limitation is one of the best.
Yes. Blessed are the
Yeah.
poor in spirit. That literally means blessed are the people who understand that they don't have it all together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you parent with crisis. You're trying to make sure you're doing it with grace and with truth. You're seeking out the correct type of help. That's so incredibly important. But all these things are coming back to an identity issue in our students. I think one of the main ways we can shape identity is by our personal lives being in the Word, by being in a local church, but also teaching our kids what to prioritize. St. Augustine, or Augustine if you're a super cool theologian guy, he talked about the order of our loves. And if your loves are out of order, that's where you get depression. That's where you get anxiety. That's where you get these identity issues.
So good.
But if you love God first and foremost, the rest of those things can tend to fall in the same place. How would you advise somebody who has a parent, who is a parent? Hopefully they have a parent as well. That'd be great. Everybody does. How would you advise them to get their priorities right? Because if you get that wrong, there's a lot of issues.
That's really good. Yeah, because priorities are really important in our lives. Like let me start by saying, like, we have set our priorities sometimes. The Jacobsons have sometimes set their priorities not perfect, right? Everyone has, yeah. And that's like what I'm trying to prove there is, like, no one at this table here is perfect or has done it absolutely right. No one at any table, other than maybe the Last Supper table, right, where Jesus was sitting, he was perfect.
Judas was there, though.
Judas was there too, so it kind of balances out.
And Peter,
I don't know.
you know.
Anyway, but anyway, like, no one has sat at any table and had a discussion about parenting and done it absolutely 100% right. So setting priorities, though, is right. That helps with identity so much, because I know, again, as the Jacobsons, sometimes our priorities has been sports.
And I think that's most people.
That's the
Maybe not
big
most,
thing,
but
right?
yeah, it's a huge
right.
thing.
Like, I mean, there are other things that will pull our time away from our family.
But it's bigger than it's ever been.
But let's just call it what it is. Like, sports is huge. Like, we all have our favorite sports teams.
Yeah.
We all want our kids. We all want better for our kids than what we had, right?
And it comes from a good heart. That's the point. Like, you
Help
want
your kid
to
get
be
a free
successful.
education,
You
or
want them to learn leadership skills. You want them to learn how to be a good follower. Like, those things are wonderful things you learn from sports.
And grit.
But still, that prioritized order has to be in the right place.
Yes. So you have to prioritize the church. You have to prioritize God. You have to prioritize your quiet time. You have to prioritize those things in your family as a family unit above sports, above whatever those extracurricular activities are. Personally, we've done that good sometimes, and we've been terrible at that sometimes. Like, we've said, hey, I can't come to church this Sunday because we've got a volleyball tournament we're going to. I want my kid to come to Wednesday night student time, but they've got practice, and how do you balance that? Because you want your kids, like you just said, you want your kids to have these experiences, and some of these experiences, like, we've had great conversations, like, on the ride home from a tournament saying, I don't really like my coach right now. Well, that's okay, because this is a part of life.
Yeah.
You're going to have a boss that you're not going to necessarily like, but you have to deal with. And how do you deal with that? And I've got teammates on my team that are giving me a hassle, and there are tremendous, gospel sharing opportunities within all of these settings, right? Like, as a Christian athlete, you have a unique perspective and a unique ability to share, why you don't cuss on the court, or why you shake your opponent's hands at the end of the game, or why you don't play dirty, or why we're honest with the ref when you tip the ball out of bounds and they didn't call it, right? Like,
Salt and light.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is the main fear, though, driving parents who do prioritize sports over Jesus? Like, what do you feel like is the main fear there?
The main fear of driving them away from Jesus?
Not driving them away from, but prioritizing stuff above Jesus. Sports or drama or whatever.
Well, their kid's going to miss out. That their kid's not going to be well-rounded. That their kid's going to be an introvert because they're not a part of a bigger program. Like, I mean, this is football. Like, football's important, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, is it?
Right.
Like,
and it's a fear that, like, the season's going to pass. Oh, they'll have God the rest of their lives, but they don't. They've only got sports for this season of time. I don't want them to miss out. And it's like parenting. You're parenting from a place of FOMO, fear of missing out, as opposed to parenting from a place of, like, in the presence of Jesus is the fullness of joy. And the rest of those things are good things, but they're not the ultimate things.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's really great. You're absolutely right. Yeah, like, I mean, we all have our prime, right? Oh, man, now is the best time of your life. You're going to remember these years. And yes, I do remember a lot of my sporting events from back then.
But for the Christian, heaven is the ultimate. Like,
right, yeah, but that's in the past. Like, I'm building for the future now, right? Like, we're building for our kids in the future. Like, we want that solid foundation. And honestly, like, if you are prioritizing games and practices over a regular meeting time with the body of Christ, what are your kids going to do when they're on their own? Like, I mean, you've all heard the stats. Like, 70% of kids who are in church, like, when they get that opportunity to not have to go to church, they're not going. Right. Not consistently anyway. They might show up, those two
Christmas,
times a year. But they're going to follow the examples. They're going to follow the teachings that you have taught them. Are you teaching them that sometimes you have to miss practice because you need to go to church? Sometimes, maybe you're going to miss that third day of the tournament because you need to go to church and spend time communing and building relationships with the body of Christ. Because you're going to blow out a knee.
Yeah.
You're going to get past your prime. You're not going to run as fast. You're not going to jump as high.
Yeah.
And that season is going to end.
Yeah.
There are very few, it's like 0.02% of kids
Right.
who play high school sports, play collegiate sports.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
And
get rides for collegiate sports.
part of it too is teaching our kids a good ecclesiology. Like, you don't go to church to be fed. You go to church because you are there to serve and to show other people Jesus. Like, the more that we have that arena culture, and coming from the sports world, we're used to the arena culture where we all look and see and watch the professionals do.
Yeah.
The more we can teach our kids what we said at the beginning. You're not the future of the church as a student. You are the current
Yeah.
church.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
you can be used to encourage people. You can be used to serve people. So when we say, like, hey, I'm going to choose sports over the church, our ecclesiology is, oh, well, we only go to church just to go and watch. And so
Yeah.
I would rather my kid go do than come, go watch at church. No, go and do and be a part of the
And
body of
again,
Christ.
students are a part of the church. And if 1 Corinthians is telling the truth and we are the body of Christ, and there's eyes and there's ears and there's feet
Right,
and there's
exactly.
hands, and people aren't showing up, like, yeah, you're right. Like, the body is not complete and there's something missing there. So
Yeah, and one of the things we talk about in Alive Students is our mission statement is we are alive to serve others as part of it.
Right.
Like, you can't serve others if you don't show up,
that's true.
right? Like, you have to be a part of the body of Christ, whatever your part is, like you were saying, Corey. Like, if you are to be the hands and feet of Christ, then great, be the hands. If you're to be the eyeball, whatever it is, whatever your part is, it is important. It is valuable.
Absolutely.
You are valuable. And one of the things I've told our students a lot is, like, students often get this either idea. Sometimes it's a real thing from the older generations, and sometimes it's just preconceived, or not preconceived, but just falsely thought of. I can't think of the word there. I'm sure you'll think of it because Anyway, they get this idea that they are the next generation. And I've told them time and time again, no, you are generation now. Like, you are shaping the next generation of church now. What do you want that to look like? Do you want it to look like a bunch of sometime believers who show up and do their own thing and are isolated in their own little worlds? Or do you want to look like a united body, a united group of people who love God, who put God as their primary, as their priority, as their number one priority, God first?
Yeah.
All right? Like, what do you want? You're not going to get out of the church. Like, you can't wait till you're 25 to start pouring into the church. Like, that doesn't work.
And start asking, like, who's replacing the three of us? Like,
Right.
like they're in alive. Hopefully, like, God willing, like, that would be an amazing testimony.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge thing. So definitely prioritizing the right things, because as we said at the beginning, social media is, lies and all these things is a big problem. So we need to prioritize truth and pouring truth in the Word of God and because that's a losing battle of just information. Right. So as we talked about social media in the beginning, what are some pointers to help kids deal with social media and maybe setting some boundaries?
So I'm gonna attack that from the parenting side of things, because kids, it's different. Like, kids just need to they need to cultivate where they're getting their resources from, where they're getting their information from, right? Because my TikTok feed is not my daughter's TikTok
algorithms are
feed.
a real thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so, like, dealing with that, like, that's I think a different part of the issue. I think from a parent side, like, we have to set digital limits. Like, we have to be able to say no and then be okay with that. Some of the things that we've done that we've been successful with, like, one of the biggest successes that we had was your phone provider has parental controls. You can turn off data to any individual phone on your account whenever you want, and you can turn it back on whenever you want. You can set it to a schedule, and you don't have to keep up with it. So we had, when they were younger, it was 9, and then when they got older in high school, it was 10 o'clock at night. Their phones shut off. There was no more data coming to their phones, and they knew that, and they understood what was going on. So we didn't necessarily take their phones out of their rooms, but we would say at 10 o'clock, no more data.
Yeah. Let's turn it into a calculator.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, if you need to do homework, great, do your homework, but you're not getting onto your phone to do that. And so there are so many, like, built-in tools into the hardware and the applications that your students are using that you can utilize with just, it's very simple. Like, when you go in to pay your phone bill, you can go over and click on that parental controls and say, oh, look at that. I can turn off my data from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m.
Yeah.
or you turn it off during school hours. If you
Yeah.
don't have, like whatever you want to do. And that's the thing too, is like every family's a little different.
Yeah.
So you need to do what's best for your student.
Yeah.
Like rules that we had might not apply to your kids because your kids are in a different situation, or you have different levels of trust or different levels of, tolerance for what you allow in and whatnot. And I'm not trying to set those limits other than say God first, right? Other things you can do. We did do a tiered approach to allowing applications onto their phones, like Snapchat. Like you got to be a senior in high school or past that to get Snapchat, because that is a very
dumpster
dangerous
fire,
place. Yes, I was gonna say cesspool, but but that's social media as a whole. Like obviously, kids don't care about Facebook, but like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all those, whatever the new one is. She just told me this week what it was. I can't think of it. There's a new challenge type app out there where you send a challenge to your friend and they've got like 2 hours to do it and they've got to take pictures, and then it's like a Snapchat TikTok mix kind of thing. So
How do you enforce that?
you check their phones.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard a great style of doing this is saying like, hey, this is my phone that I'm lending to you. You can use it, but I have the right to check it whenever I want because it's my phone.
Right.
So you're telling your kid like, this is on loan. You can load up all your stuff, but at any time
Actually,
I
a great
want,
way of saying that.
yeah, anytime I want,
good.
I'm going to be able to check my phone for what's going on it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I paid for it.
Yeah.
Like,
You make those threats, but then you have to follow through with
Sure.
that
Yes.
too. Like
You gotta be
like
consistent.
you periodically, and then you check everything.
Yeah.
You check text messages. You log into those. You go into those apps because kids are clever.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I love my kids.
And I know because I was clever. Like,
Right, exactly.
I got around to things like,
That's a
they're
great point.
not more sinful than I was. Like,
Yeah.
That's a great point. And that's why I keep reminding my kids, I'm like, hey, dudes, I've
been there.
I was a teenager and I loved getting in trouble.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I knew how to, there are so many things that they still don't know that I did that eventually we will laugh
Don't-
about.
There's
That's
certain
great.
things about human beings that will never change. Like
Right.
that, all of that. We are crafty in our youth and we'll figure it out.
That to say is that a student might have 2 or 3 Instagram accounts,
Right.
might have 2 or 3 Snapchat accounts. So you have to log into those accounts. You have to know the basics on how those applications work.
Yeah.
So you have to get some education. You have to know how TikTok works. You want to log in, you want to check and see who their friends are. You want to check in and see, like on Instagram, who are they messaging? Who's messaging them back? What are they talking about? Because we've had some great conversations with more our daughters. My son still doesn't really get on social media, which he's just this weird
Praise the Lord for that,
anomaly
yeah.
of millennials of like, he's like, no, I don't do social media. But like with my daughters, like when we grab their phones and we're like, what's this? Well, we were just having a conversation. We were just talking. No. What you're doing here is not appropriate.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about someone in your class in an inappropriate way.
Yeah.
But like the messaging is so important, especially like Instagram and Snapchat messaging. Like you have to know how to get into those because teenage boys are teenage boys.
Yep.
And that is to say, they will send half naked pictures of themselves to girls, and they will ask girls to send naked pictures of them back to them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a real threat, especially in our students right now, is the lack of respect of our human body. Right. It's just, we have gotten to a place in social media world and in society now to where we've made objects out of everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And we forget that there's a human being behind that.
Yeah. Because of the disconnection. You're so connected, but you're not physically connected.
And the only way you're connecting is through those. So you want the approval of whoever you're messaging.
Yeah.
You want that approval. You crave that. And the internet doesn't forget. Once you post it, once you send it, once you make it digital, it is there forever.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest lessons I think that we were able to teach our kids, our daughters especially, was it does not go away.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And the proof is, look at all the news stories over the past 5 years, like all these things that people dredge up from 20 years ago
Right, exactly.
that someone did.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's ruined them.
Yeah.
Like that just,
And even things that like Snapchat says, oh, it deleted. They have servers. Are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
So there's the
Yes.
the limiting of digital media, but there's also helping our students spot the lies. Like one of the things that we're trying to do with our kids is when we watch, our kids are younger, so when we watch Disney movies or something, I'm like, hey, they have a certain worldview, Clive, our 7-year-old. what do you think their worldview is, and how do you feel like it's different? And so he'll be able to tell me, and it's a training process, so it's over time. But he'll be able to say like what they're doing is saying that if you, if you accept your friends, then you're going to be happy, you're going to be satisfied in life. And okay, well, tell me about the gospel, and how does the gospel kind of shine a light on that, but differentiate from that in a sense. And so helping our students to learn, even on social media, how do you spot lies in the culture? Because right now, it's kind of the new age movement and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There are in post-modernity, there's so many lies that say, hey, if you just do what you want, because your heart is beautiful, it's not deceitful. If you follow your heart, you're going to be happy and satisfied. Yeah. And so learning to look at that and go like, nah, man, I feel like I've made decisions that I wish I didn't have. I feel like I've, connecting with Paul in Romans 7, I feel like I've made decisions that I wish I didn't do and all that kind of stuff. Like, we've got to teach our students to spot lies.
Yeah. And like the biggest lie right now, or that has been for the last few years, is love is love.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you love who you want to love. This is your decision. This is your manifestation of love. However you want to do it, there is no wrong way to love. And that's, when you obviously when you hold it up against the Bible, like, wrong. Nope, absolutely not. Like, love is not love. Yes, we are to love our neighbors, but we are to love our neighbors the way that Christ loves us. Yeah. We are to love God above all else, which means putting away our selfish pride, putting away our selfish desires, putting away anything that gives us honor and glory, and loving God and loving others and lifting others up. The same way that Christ loves us.
And it's the biggest lie, because true love that we see is self-sacrifice, is dying to self. And so to say that, like, well, accept everything about yourself, or do what you want to do, don't worry about who it affects, that is literally the exact opposite of what we're told.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think to like teaching our students to understand algorithms, like, if you're not paying to be on a platform, you're the product. You're the one being sold to the companies. And so they're gonna show you all the information that will make you either angry or sad. Those are the two primary ways to keep you on a platform. And so they're curating, their algorithms are trying to feed you things that are gonna make you angry and sad or anxious, because that's gonna keep you on their platform. And so for students to understand, that's part of the spotting the lies. Like, okay, you're being fed things. Can you see a kind of ribbon of information where you can go, okay, I can see how that's connected to this, and you can really point that back. Like, I know for me, there are times where I've been on social media and I've been like, man, I feel anxious. Oh, well, that's because YouTube has served me up a smattering of different terrible, news, smorgasbord of news things that I need to just ignore right now, because it is this echo chamber that it creates. And when we talk about that in the political space all the time, but it is true for our students. They are living in an echo chamber as well. That's how they can sell you to different companies. And the quicker students realize, like, oh, that I'm only getting one side of a story, the better. So I think that's part of like helping us limit and understand social media.
You say that like that's an obvious thing, like people just know that, but people don't know that.
It's crazy.
Like, and that's not just our student generation. That's all generations. Like I'll have conversations with my crazy aunt, in quotes, right, who is all about this one train of thought, and you'll try to interject something. Oh, no, I saw this.
Yeah,
this is truth, right? But that's a great point. Like, it is an echo chamber for our students. Like, because they are on social media so much, because they're on their phones so much, they're only going to hear what the algorithm wants them to hear, which is anger or sadness, right? Yeah. And that's just not the world that we live in. I mean, it is part of the world that we live in, but the world is so much more than that, right?
So before we wrap up, any last thoughts on parenting students and helping them walk with the Lord?
Like, so all of this to say, like, I was reminded of a story that I heard a million years ago when we first got married and we were having kids. I don't remember if it was Chuck Swindoll or the 5 Languages guy or whoever that was. But he told this story. He's like, I was just out of seminary, and I was an associate pastor at this church, and they put me in charge of the family area. There wasn't really family pastors back in the 90s, but like, it was basically the family pastor. Like, he was in charge of parenting. He was in charge of the parenting class. And he's like, this is gonna be great. I got all this information. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you how to live your life. I'm going to tell you how to train up your child in the way you should go, and everything's going to be great. And he said he went to this class and he just laid it out for him. Then a couple years later, he had a kid. And so, like the class title changed from everything you need to know about being a parent to this is some ideas of what I have to be a parent. And then he had his second kid and his third kid, and the class changed to, all right, guys, do you have any ideas? Because I am completely out of ideas
Right.
now, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is with parenting. Like we have this plan going in that we're going to be great and everything's going to be awesome. And this kind of leads back to what we were talking about earlier. But I would say, you have to be consistent. You have to stay strong in what you're doing. Like you're playing the long game, like we talked about earlier. This is not something like you cannot be devastated because your kid does something bad because your kid's going to do something bad.
Yeah.
You did something bad when you were a kid.
Yes.
It's going to happen. Yeah. So, if I could encourage parents right now, that's what I would say is just, you are not alone. You have a support system around you. And, as for Alive students in particular, that's one of our goals is we want to partner with parents.
Yeah.
Like we want to be that resource. We want to be that beacon that you can go to when you need help.
Yeah.
Right.
And it shouldn't be done alone because you're not getting paid to disciple like 50 students on your own. That's impossible and it won't happen. So giving parents more resources and ways to do that, even at our church, what are some ways that they can, have that sounding board or learn some more?
Yeah. Well, outside of making contact with me, we do Wednesday night classes. We've got parenting classes. We've got we've got adulting classes. We've got community groups. I don't know if you want to kind of hit on community groups a little bit.
Yeah, we've got, for our community group, we're young parents. And so we've got, people who are in a similar life stage with, kids. I think my kid is the oldest and he's 7. But then we have other groups that are older, they have older kids that are in middle school and high school. Yeah. And so it's like, get a part of a group of people who are kind of in the same suffering season as you are. Because there's always going to be highs and lows. And we don't want to paint this as like, man, parenting's awful all the time. No. There's also incredible moments of joy in parenting. But get with people so you can celebrate those mountaintop highs. Get with people so you can cry with them, weep with those who weep in the valleys. And so I think there's all sorts of different resources. Do you have any other resources you're thinking of?
I mean, we do. I have recommended a book since Arthur recommended it to me a couple years ago. And it's this book right here. It's 10 Questions Every Teen Should Ask and Answer About Christianity by Rebecca McLaughlin. I've read through this book a couple times. I've shared this book with our small group leaders. This book is great because it talks all about like what is currently going on with our kids. And these are real issues, how can I live my best life now? Can Jesus be true for you, but not for me? Can we just be good without God? All the way down to like the bigger questions, like who cares if you're a boy or a girl? Does God care when we hurt? Why can't we just agree that love is love? Like real things that honestly our kids are going through every day. They're being bombarded with this type of stuff of like, whatever God you want to believe in is the God you should believe in. Whatever love you want to believe in is the love you should believe in. Whatever manifestation you make up in your mind that day and wake up with, you should do. And this book has been a great resource to help answer and direct those questions, like especially along the gender issues and the homosexuality issues, because like she's very honest about it. She's like, I have had these thoughts, these emotions of sexual desires, and it's a sin like every other sin. So how do we deal with that through the lens of Christ, through the lens of forgiveness and growing our relationship with God? So really great resource. Another resource, Strange New World by Carl Trueman. I'll be honest, I've started reading this book, and it's probably smarter than I am. So I have to take this book in little pieces, but it's how thinkers and activists redefined identity and sparked the sexual revolution. And it's all about how thoughts, and maybe you want to talk a little bit about this. But
it's really when we talk about Spot the Lie, that book goes into kind of, talks about, Nietzsche and back in the day, the origin of these lies and how they have changed over time to get us where we're at. And it will help definitely adults. It is a heady book, we'll call it. It is intellectual, but it's good, and it will help with that spotting the lie.
Absolutely. And I would say one little bit of warning when it comes to resources is the internet is full of information.
Dumpster fires.
It can be. I mean, it's such a great resource.
Dumpster fires and
When it's used
Great
properly,
things.
it's a great resource. I would say be careful about where your sources are coming
Yeah.
from when you look at internet stuff. Like I would check those abouts. I would check where other links go to make sure that you're not going down a path
Yeah.
that is fronted as biblical truth. But then when you look at like where the sources are coming from, it's either people who are just completely making stuff up or they have other intentions in mind, and you're going down paths that sound similar but are not the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you ever have any questions about what you're reading, let us know, and we will be more than happy.
Yeah.
John will definitely be more than happy to,
absolutely.
to read it.
Corey
and,
reads more than I do.
and but you use really big words.
That's just because I'm
You do.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you remember the big words I read. I don't.
I count up at least 4 words that I'm like,
Okay.
I think I might know what
John,
that means.
well, I wake up-
postmodernity.
Just-
I wake up
yeah.
in the morning and I write those down. Who's gonna think I'm smart today? Okay, so we got the book resources, all that.
Yep.
Podcasts are great, but like, I think Corey had mentioned counselors before. Corey has a counseling degree.
Pastoral
Make
counseling
sure,
degree.
different than licensed mental health
Yes,
counselor. But
yes.
if you need
I know my
that,
limits.
like if you need
Absolutely.
that, get that. And
Yeah.
if you're part of our church, ask us. We have connections with licensed mental health counselors. It is so important to make sure you don't wait till it's too late. Like hit that when it becomes an issue, and don't be afraid of it.
So a great resource for students. Most schools, including the school that we are attached to, has free on-site counseling from the state available to them. All you have to do is call your guidance counselor, call your admin at your school, whatever school you're at, and ask about it, and then they will point you in the right direction. They will come on site like once a week, and they will meet with your student.
That's huge.
That's awesome.
You know, it's not a necessarily a Christian resource, but it is a licensed therapist. It is a professional who will come on site and meet with your kid, or you can set up times off site if you want to meet with them. But that is probably the easiest resource that's available to just about everyone who has a student.
It's a great place to start for sure.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, hey, parents, we hope you found this helpful. Type in the comments just like maybe there was a single point that really stood out to you that you felt like was really helpful. Maybe that would be encouraging for somebody else. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Don, thanks for being on the video podcast, man. And so, guys, we love you. We hope to see you all in the next one. We'll see you. Bye. Bye.
Sayonara.